Alright, now it's time to go to Manchester,
Okay.
as intended in the previous part. Um,
The path of least resistance. I see what you did
so
there.
that's the title of the game.
And that's the path we are walking as we go to Manchester, England. Which, from what
Mm-hmm.
Dwibs tells me, houses the best soccer team out there.
The Manchester United, yes.
Well, they
Yes.
were.
Alright, if you have a keen memory, you will know that this was the segment that was showcased in the E3 2006 at the PS3 presentation conference. Which, sure, it's actually a good representation of the game overall. Now that I think about it, they didn't showcase really the tutorial, and it's a good place to showcase the chaoticness of war. Again, another thing important for this game is the technical aspect, in a sense of showcasing as many enemy on screen without having to tank the performance. And again, outside of the occasional V-Sync, as Pedro noted in the first part, again, the frame rate holds fairly well. Like I said, they've never seen it particularly deep. By the time we're recording this, I'm almost done playing also the third game, and I can tell you that one, since it came late into the PS3 cycle, 2011, I think, that one actually has some occasional dips at that point, but it was kind of inevitable because in terms of presentation, it tries to squeeze a bit more out of the console. This one, you can tell that it's not a case of it's a PS2 game that is just upscaled, like say that Gran Turismo game that we saw at the Sony conference presenting the PS3. But it's still in a transitional period more than anything. Some parts are a bit more rough around the edges. The cutscenes are presented in CG and not in gameplay format, in engine. So there is that. But again, it's all good overall for the presentation. I don't mind that.
I can actually tell that no, because when you look at the protagonist model, no, that's clearly PS. But you couldn't do that on the PS.
Again,
especially considering the PS2 was actually the weakest of the consoles of its generation.
Mm-hmm.
The GameCube and the Xbox were more powerful.
Again, it also
Still beat both of them.
This not well. Again, it was more of a case of circumstantial kind of thing. With the price, the type of third-party support,
And the DVD player.
Yeah, and the
capability
DVD
of the
player.
PS2.
Yes.
One thing to recall: a console being the most powerful of its generation does not guarantee its win or victory.
Jova, even more than that. If you actually look up, the winner of each console generation was never the most powerful console. Never.
Yeah, ain't that a thing?
The NES, not as powerful as the Master System. It still beat it by 10 to 1.
Yeah. The Xbox could play DVDs as well. I should. Mention
Yeah.
as well.
Although if I recall correctly, wasn't the PS2 more straightforward with how it could play DVDs?
That I do not know. I never.
I don't know that either.
I wouldn't know. I've never had an Xbox console. I do have Xbox controllers, though.
That's what usual people have.
I guess unless we're counting the
trying to
PC as an Xbox console now. Sorry, go on.
But you look at the Super Nintendo Genesis, the 3DO was more powerful than both of those consoles. It completely got obliterated by the SNES and Genesis.
That exorbitant price point did not do the 3DO any favors. What was it, like $1,000, I think?
I don't know.
Like $700.
It was considerably more expensive. The sad part is that there are good games on the 3DO. The problem is that, again, the console had too much of a price point. If they actually marketed it better and gave it a lower price, it probably could have done much better than it did.
Okay. It was $699 US, which today's equivalent is $1,400 as of 2022.
Yeah.
And Need for Speed, the gaming series, got its start on the 3DO.
Let me put it like this. That price point was so bad that a year later it was reduced to $399.
Look at the next generation after that, the Dreamcast, far more powerful than the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64. It still didn't sell as much as those. Because by that point, Sega's brand power was basically at an all-time low.
I think it
After
also
that-
it was a factor of the more casual. Remind me, Pedro, because I don't know this kind of stuff. Were FIFA games, regularly put on the Dreamcast as well
Yes.
when they came out? Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, because again, we have to go through the common lower denominator. A lot of people, especially here in Europe, get a game console just for FIFA and nothing else, only strictly FIFA. So that probably is a determining factor there.
That
Oh,
was
sure.
possibly part of also why some companies were hesitant on bringing games other than sports games to the European regions.
That being said, FIFA alone will not save you from.
Well, that's what's happening now, considering what happened between EA and FIFA. We'll have to see what's gonna happen now.
I guess. The next up, of course, like I said, the original Xbox, more powerful than the GameCube and the PS2. Still, granted, it sold more than the GameCube, but the PS2, of course, is the highest selling console of all time. So obviously,
And
that-
Generation 7.
The PS3, more powerful than the Xbox 360 and the Wii. And while it did still technically, at the very tail end of the generation, still managed to slightly surpass the sales, it's like a very last-minute win. Yes, technically, if you go just by the numbers, technically the PS3 managed to beat it at the last minute. But let's face it, the Xbox 360 dominated that generation.
And even still, it was technically a competition for second place since the Wii came out on top.
Yeah.
Admittedly, though, the Wii had, like, the ultimate casual power for it, so... I mean, okay, I can't say I dug how Nintendo followed it up with the Wii U, but they did strike gold getting the casual market. Problem was that they relied on that a little too much for the Wii U. Oh. Yeah, that's right, speaking of, it's the 8th generation. Xbox One was the most powerful console of that generation.
Actually, it wasn't. That's the thing.
Pretty
the
sure it was
Xbox One-
touted as the best way to play.
Well, no, the Xbox One X was. The original Xbox One, on the other hand, was notable for being underpowered. In fact, a lot of games, especially during the early years of that generation, were always running in 720p compared to the PS4 version's 1080p. For example, Sonic Forces on the Xbox One runs at 720p, whereas the PS4 version runs at 1080p, even on the base console.
Remember,
So-
Joe, it's probably because they had the... Oh, Russell, you made me type. I can explain that later on. But it's also tied to the fact probably that because of being originally intended the console to work in a certain way, they had to do adjustments at the last second, and probably that was screwed it over.
Remember, that console was marketed to casual TV viewers first and gamers second, so they didn't think power was all that important.
Okay,
So-
Alright, next up...
The convoy was stranded
If you
on the
forgot,
west side
the reason
of
we're getting to Manchester is because Hale has to reconjunct with our forces, but have a convoy.
A radio message from Hale's squad said they were entering Manchester Cathedral. The cathedral was a field hospital during the war. It was abandoned in a hurry and still had some supplies and ammunition. Unfortunately, it was also a breeding ground for some of the lower forms of Chimera.
Sounds like hell. Get it?
Which in
Because it's in a
church is very,
church.
very ironic.
That face.
Again, Hale design is very generic. I can tell you that he improves a bit in the second game.
I mean, his design is not really the problem. His design would be fine if he actually had a character, you know?
No, like I said, that also will be improved in the second game, but that will really... we deserve also for a special talk I need to do when we get to the second game. But for the time being, this particular level, Dwibs, you might want to do the honors and mention something that happened tied to this level.
All right. When the game came out, this level got some controversy from certain sectors. The leaders of the Church of England thought this was an unauthorised depiction of Manchester Cathedral, claiming it to be desecration and copyright infringement, and calling Sony and saying it was inappropriate of Sony to let players fire guns in a city with a gun problem, making several legal threats.
I love
And while
it.
Sony
The word done.
Gone.
And while Sony apologised for any perceived offence, they mentioned the game takes place in an alternate universe and we didn't intend to depict this cathedral. And nevertheless, the cathedral drew up some rules requiring future game developers to ask for permission to use religious spaces. Ian Bogus, who was a Georgia Tech professor and Persuasive Games CEO, defended the use of the cathedral, saying the set piece was significant to the story and called Sony disappointing for apologising. The church leaders were called uninformed by critics who stated that they mistook science fiction for simulated
Hold on,
murder.
give me a second. The Augur, heavy penetrating rifle fires blast of transient radiation that will tunnel through solid matter. The blast increases in power with each object they pass through. While the Augur's relatively small ammunition capacity, the fact that it ignores cover means every blast is potentially lethal. Pressing L1 deploys a force barrier. This alters the Augur's energy blast to create a barrier that is impervious to all weapon fire except when from the Augur. Enemy will suffer injuries if they move through the barrier. So, on paper, this weapon is amazing because it bypasses cover, and in fact it becomes even more powerful than that. Problem, it sucks so much because you cannot see through the cover where the enemy is, while the AI, of course it does, meaning that any enemy that has an auger in mind becomes absurdly dangerous because they know exactly your position and will blast the shit out of you, and you always have to be on your movement. This, in case you're wondering, it's most likely a reference to the Mancubus in Doom 2, I think, because a particular glitch basically allowed these projectiles to actually bypass a solid object like walls. So they wanted to be tongue-in-cheek once again, Insomniac. So again, the Augur is a weapon that technically is amazing on paper, but at least for this game kinda sucks. Thankfully it will be improving later on. Finish on, Dweebs.
As for the aftermath, in terms of the legal ground, a solicitor by the name of Alex Chapman from Campbell Hooper cited something from the UK's Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988 that states that the cathedral is on public display, therefore using the interior is not copyright infringement. And due to the lack of a valid legal argument, they dropped the complaint, and the cathedral saw a lot of increase in visitor numbers due to the controversy anyway, so...
Win-win.
So yeah,
Publicity.
the point is that these people basically would have had a better, a better image of themselves just shutting the hell up.
Well, ironically, it sounds like they got more visitation, so...
True, but the overall process was still very stupid.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, but last I checked, you can't copyright a location. At least not one like that.
Yeah. Can you even copyright a cathedral? How the hell does that even work?
I'm not sure it would even work because by definition, again, maybe Jova, you don't have a lot of perspective, but European cathedrals are literally secular. They were built during medieval ages. By all laws of copyright, they should be on public domain.
Yeah, I'm aware also. Like, America kind of learned the hard way that Europe is a lot more familiar with ancient architecture like cathedrals and castles. That's sort of why Disneyland Paris didn't initially take off when we centered that around castles, because castles are a lot easier to come by over in Europe.
Honestly, to me, it just comes across as them trying to, copyright bully another entity, honestly.
Like,
Kinda
okay,
reminds me.
it sounds...
Remember, Pedro, this was 2006. It was also the time the Vatican was, having the panic attack towards the Da Vinci Code. So I get the idea the Anglicans in the UK might have had a bit of a scare of themselves and wanted to try to, jump on the moment.
And it does sound like they were going off of a bit of misinformation from critics. Like,
for reference, audience, the branch of Christianity that is in the UK is not technically the same as in rest of Europe or in America. It's not technically the same as Protestantism, but it's something that Henry VIII basically established, in which the monarch of the UK counts also as the church leader there. It's a thing, I guess.
oh, just to legalize divorce.
It reminds me of when Sega tried to copyright fucking touch controls.
Like,
Tried
you
to
know,
sue level 5 for Inazuma, because according to them, Inazuma 11's controls infringed on their patents, and to this day I still love Level 5's public response to the lawsuit, saying this is stupid, and our controls do not. In fact, they even went as far as to say that this was a fear tactic, and that this can cause creativity constraints, and we will fight against them in court for this.
Which is technically sorry, go on. Sorry.
What happened? They ended up settling out of court. For those who don't know, that's fancy talk for Sega realized, oh shit, they're not buying our bull crap. Okay, let's pay them something quietly on the side so that we don't take this publicly.
Or get
It's similar to
countersued.
what happened between recently the developers of Use with Nintendo.
Basically, Sega thought they could get some easy, quick money out of Level 5, but Level 5 was all like, no, we're not putting up with your bullying, fuck off.
The statement is also technically what happened when, I think it was Bandai Namco, basically patented the idea of having a minigame during a loading screen, which is why outside of the Budokai Tenkaichi games, you know, you don't really see those that much anymore, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next... Sorry, go on.
Sorry. No, okay. The sad part about... you talk about the Kenji Yamamoto's music, right?
No, remember, the Budokai Tenkaichi have these mini games, like for example, Goku eating rice during the loading screens.
The carpal tunnel, yeah. Right.
Not that. If I recall correctly, Bandai Namco basically patented those, and as a result, not many people actually can use them unless they want to pay them. It's a bit similar to what Warner Bros. Did with the Nemesis system for the Shadow Mortal duology.
Like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I understand the purposes of copyright. Ideally, they are so that original creators of certain concepts get their paid dues and credit for stuff. You know, used for that, it's fine. But God, I am so annoyed at how draconian it has gotten and how easily abused it can be for all the wrong reasons.
Look, guys, it's the Toys for Bob logo. Now we're just missing the demonic burping clowns.
Or the former Toys for Bob logo, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think around this time, 2006, they still had it.
Yeah, well, I meant nowadays.
Yeah, obviously. Also, you've got basically, thanks to those mine traps, Jova, you've got a better view of what the hedgehog grenade actually function, because they use the same. Well, some grenades used for those also tend to use require you to actually see where the position is and either jump or duck in order to avoid them. Also, yes,
no
unfortunately,
physics for the seesaw.
On the seesaw. I mean, again, early PS3 title, I can actually, understand if they would not do that kind of immersion.
I suppose we can just assume that the soldier there was heavy enough to overbalance us.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm actually looking again at our PCSS Free Wiki page for this game. This game requires quite a bit of PC to run, even though it's an early PS3 game. According to what they say here, it uses a lot of VRAM, which can lead to crashing.
I get the idea, considering it was designed specifically for this console and had a custom engine to boot, it might be a bit tricky to run, which is probably also another big reason why there wasn't a remaster, at least until this point.
And if it was like an early PS3 game, back when the PS3 was at its friskiest, let's say.
See what I mean? Ideally, I was trying to use the auger behind that column in order to actually maximize damage, but not being able to see where the enemy is a big problem, which, like I said, it is a thing that they actually fixed in the next couple of games for the weapon, so at least thank God for that.
It's weird how whenever you reference the sequel, it sounds like there's another shoe waiting to drop, and that the sequel includes some stuff.
It's something you will be able to see. My big point that I guess I'm almost done with the third game, so I guess I can summarize already at this point. I think the best way to repropose these games, as costly as it may be, probably would have to be a remake done in the same style of the Insane Trilogy for Crash, as in, the three games done in a unified art style, because that was also changes, and that applies the same type of gameplay across the three, experiences. That probably would work for the better, overall.
And would it be one that like takes the best aspects from all three, or is there any one game?
Mostly
that's...
the third one. I think by the time of the third game, Insomniac perfectly refined what the gameplay would be, and trust me, you'll be able to see for yourself. So just describing it doesn't really do it justice. But again, there's also, again, like I said, the fact of the difficulty. Considering these days, a lot of first-party titles for Sony are aimed mostly towards, a casual type of player with higher difficulties tended to be, just stuck down. Having a base difficulty this high, even on easy mode, it would probably be a huge deterrent. Which, to be fair, the third game also adjusted a bit that. It's still relatively difficult, but, they lowered the bar significantly considered from this and the second game. But now grumpy Hale McFace has to reach the place.
Yeah, like, I get it. We don't see his face.
Oi, got a license for that accent, mate.
I find it ironic that he seems to get the most expressions, because normally in games like these, first-person wise, normally they would focus on giving almost every other character the expressions over the main character, since we obviously didn't see their face that often.
Like you said, there's also the fact that this is retold. Is basically, while the gameplay is practically in the present, the narration is something that's happened later and is basically a recollection of thoughts from, this woman who is higher in command of a British Resistance Army. Again, I forgot her grade specifically.
I will say,
honestly, it's still, considering the levels are, bite-sized and everything, I think for an arcade experience, it's still pretty enjoyable. Again, it's just that if you go here looking for the story, you probably won't find it. But like I said, around this time, a lot of shooters just simply put did not have a lot of story to begin with.
Yeah, the main focus was often on the multiplayer.
Which I guess it's a good time to explain. For reference, this level takes us specifically squarely around, this particular square in Manchester, and you need to defend the convoy. Thankfully, it's not an escort mission, don't worry about that, but it's basically horde mode. You will be constantly swarmed, and you need to resist, basically.
So, would you say
yeah, the multiplayer. I haven't played it personally, because by the time I played these for the first time, the servers were already shut down. But I collected information from people who did back in the day, and it seems it was very solid. Again, you could play either human or chimera, divided into factions, and it was standard stuff, capture the objective, and the stuff that you would think of, stuff like Halo and Call of Duty, classic shooter multiplayer.
That doesn't surprise me too much. Like, okay, whatever stigmas the shooter genre had, normally as long as you had a good enough multiplayer, your game was likely to sell relatively
Not always.
well.
Remember, Jova, that did not save Homefront, and from what I heard, the multiplayer in the first Homefront was actually very solid.
That's why I say most cases. Definitely not all. Homefront, okay. Homefront, I'm gonna chalk that up to Homefront was legit just another game out there. Like, it wasn't really doing anything much to stand out.
The marketing campaign was also questionable. I forgot if I mentioned during the run, but at one point they had an E3 hot dog stand that was themed after the game, which meant a lot of imagery of people basically being shot and tortured by the North Koreans.
For a hot dog
that
stand.
was weird.
Huh.
I don't know, Jova.
Look, 7th gen gaming was weird. It was, okay, I like to characterize the 7th generation of gaming as like a teenager who acts all edgy thinking, this is how I act grown up, by shirking all that childish stuff, but man, a lot of companies didn't feel like they knew properly how to make that transition, because...
Also, I forgot if I mentioned that during possibly one of the E3 conferences that we covered or something similar, but just for reference, I would be gladly try the recording for the Call of Duty campaigns at this point. I think I'm confident enough to give them a look and a try, because maybe, considering some of the shooters that I have endured, I can think that their plots might be harmless at worst,
From what I recall...
presence of people like Kevin Spacey aside. But I still have a bit of a burn stigma of the fact that one time we tried to record, I think it was the Xbox One launch thing, the trailer for Call of Duty Ghost was copyright blocked everywhere in the world. So, and I don't know if Activision, still holds that for the entire game, kind of like what Square Enix does for the ending of Lightning Returns, or not. And I would not be really that willing to give too much of a risk for our channel. Maybe I should try to do privately and test and see how it works. So
Yeah.
stay tuned, I suppose.
If I recall correctly, that was mainly the trailer footage. Normally,
I
whenever
hope that's the case.
Normally, whenever we've recorded games, maybe outside of a song or two, we have been...
Again, the ending of Lightning Returns, it's still a thing. It's still been for 10 years. And like, come on, who cares at this point?
Like, yeah, that was weird. And again, annoyingly random, since some other channels do get away with it.
No, like me and Pedro and PRI's Jova, it's probably a thing that Square Enix genuinely forgot to revoke and is still forgetting to this day because they really don't care anymore about that. And part of me doesn't blame that, but it's still a bit annoying, admittedly.
Again, this goes back to why...
Also, just to mention, you're about to have another big incursion, so do what I'm about to do. Park yourself around this area and start chugging grenade as soon as the container opens up. Trust me, you'll do yourself a favor. There you go.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, again, that's the game has a genuine scare tactic in dropping a shit ton of enemies at the same time, so it counts on you actually panicking for a sequence like this. So, props to Insomniac for trying to give you the fear effect that the enemy do, because when you think about something similar, again, the classic Gears games, when you're going up against them, the numbers are still present, definitely, but you never get the sense that they're completely overwhelming. Maybe in some particular set pieces, like the convoy at the beginning of 2, maybe, but not as much as this, while instead you get basically these shit ton of enemies at the same time, and they just keep coming and coming and coming. Anyway, here's basically your boss fight, quote unquote, for this. It's not really applicable because this franchise doesn't have so much boss fights, admittedly, because this enemy will be recurring later. The Stalker. I will read more its data technically later. All you need to know is that it's a vehicle that was designed for anti-aircraft unit, but since the air support has been basically gone, you can it basically got reconverted to fire against the infantry.
I was aware that we're going to be fighting the giant mechanical spider.
It's more like a crab, admittedly, but sure.
Okay, in that case, you know what you should do?
Strike the enemy weak point for massive damage. Like I'm about to do.
You know, honestly, it looks sort of like a squandered down version of those mecha from War of the Worlds.
I still have to... yes and no.
I say squashed down. It doesn't
like
have...
you said, the classic sci-fi imagery of the 50s, so you've probably seen a couple of movies that have something similar to this. Sorry, go on. I've lost my train of thought. Keep going, Jova.
Like, I mean, it's reminiscent of it. It's a lot bulkier and it doesn't have the long, slender legs and all that, but yeah, that might be just the 50s aesthetic. But yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier, I am so tired with how draconian copyright law is, since originally copyright law was meant to, protect the original owner, but once the original owner died, ideally it should be that it's all fair game, but not so now. And I get it. Some people might argue copyright law is supposed to protect, the reputation of a franchise here and there. Sure, it's a shame that doesn't seem to stop companies from pulling boneheaded moves, and unfortunately, when they're too afraid to try anything official, that means more often than not the franchise just lays dormant and you're lucky to see it again.
It's also, remember, the more, as far as, considering, yes, we have experienced that, even personally, but technically speaking, from what I've seen, there you go, the most brutal ones have been mostly discographic ones, but anyway, mission's over, so technically Manchester is over. But
and
just
you fell unconscious again.
what actually was in the convoy tank?
Good question.
All stalkers down. You've got your convoy. How about getting us a sodding medic?
Huh? What's going through your mind, Mitchell? Actually, does he ever speak in this? Also, his
Yes,
eyes
but
glow.
like he said, he has right 10 lines in total for this game.
I
Anyway,
thought it was going to be like, oh, this truck ran over my wife or
this
something.
is actually a bit important. Hale was managed to perceive what was what in the tank, but according to our narrator, it shouldn't have been possible.
The cell had 14-inch lead walls, but even so, given Hale's condition, I didn't want him anywhere near it. With the stalkers gone,
So next time, Waves will actually go to Nottingham.
The exchange with the Americans would have to wait.
Okay, so what are we going to see? What's left of Nottingham's Forest and Notts County, the football clubs?
I guess so.
Maybe that's how I started. The Forest and County fans got into a fight and it got way out of hand, and as a result, this happened.
I was more thinking of a Robin Hood reference, but sure, let's go with that.
Question. In this trilogy, do we ever go to Stoke?
No, unfortunately.
Oh.
Stoke got obliterated in the attack.
So the next time, where, as the narration said, we're gonna go to Nottingham to provide support. See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.
then.